Bostonians, or good evening to those who are maybe joining us from the other side of the world. This morning we had somebody from China, so that's a straight up 12-hour time difference. Maybe we'll get another couple folks here on today's call with the lovely Jen Paxton. But before we kick off, I would absolutely love to hear over in the chat on the right-hand side, where is everyone dialing in from today? I personally am in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so I can kick us off here. Not to be confused with Cambridge in the UK. Oops, I put that into the speaker chat. It would be helpful if I put it in. Oh, we got somebody from Kenya. What's up, Africa? That's dope. Welcome. Would help if I put my chat or my city into the correct chat. Amazing, amazing. Where else is everybody dialing in from? We'll put it into the session chat here so that way Jen and I can see. Maybe it's just the three of us.
Hey, that would be a nice small
learn one-on-one. Awesome, awesome. All right. Welcome, Tabitha.
Hi.
Welcome, Pooja.
Hi, Pooja.
Awesome. So we've got Illinois here, Needham, Mass representing.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing right now, folks, is just dropping into the chat where we are dialing in from over here on the right-hand side. So we've got some East Coast based in our greater Boston area. I couldn't tell you how to pronounce that city in Illinois. And then we also have the lovely Ivy joining us over from Kenya. All right, we've got Roxbury. We've got Miami. That's what's up. Bernadette, Miss 305. All right. We've got Wakefield, Mass. Ireland. Amazing. Welcome, Gary. Thanks for bringing in the EU for us here. All right. We got Connecticut. We got Somerville. We've got Grafton. Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out to Startup Boston Week. My name is Allison Sproul, and I am one of the organizers for this event. On my screen, I forget every time to share this. Well, and I say every time, but I've only moderated 3 of these this morning. Now on my screen, you will be able to see the 3 different sessions that are happening right now during Startup Boston Week. You are currently in the Executive Recruiting How to Find Your Next Great Leader workshop with Jen Paxton. If you meant to be in customer success, is startup success, or life gives you lemons, unfortunately, you are not in the right spot, and you're going to want to click agenda at the top and navigate your way through to find where you're hoping to be. But this is the Executive Recruiting Panel with Jen. And ultimately, you can always click to agenda at the top of the screen to make sure that you're navigating to your desired session. And while we wait for people to navigate around, just as a reminder, we absolutely love, love, love questions. So please go ahead and use the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of the screen at any time to ask any questions that you have. This is why we created this conference, for learning within the greater startup community. So please do share your questions. Awesome. Well, with that, I will hand the reins over to Jen Paxton, our amazing speaker and VP of People over at smile.io.
Awesome. So super excited to talk about executive recruiting today. Thank you for coming and for listening and hopefully lending your voice as well. I thought I would just start off with a quick introduction. Allison, thank you so much for introducing me. I'm Jen Paxton, the VP of People over at Smile. Fun facts about me, I actually have an undergrad and a master's degree in opera, vocal performance. So didn't go to school for the HR or business. I actually fell into recruiting after grad school to make money. So I was a starving artist. And I went into an agency world where I was hiring technical talent, and then actually got an opportunity to hire an executive. I hired a senior director of product management at Kronos. And that's really when recruiting started to click for me. And so then in 2013, took the plunge, went into a startup, and I have been scaling and growing startup teams ever since. Really throughout all the coaching and the hiring that I've done, hiring C-suites, VPs, directors has been super challenging, kind of time consuming, but also really rewarding. So that's why I'm excited just to share some insights I've gone through previously, and kind of get your voice on this as well. Just to open it up, I'd love to start with just a quick poll on, who's in the audience right now. So Allison, if you don't mind popping up the who you are poll, you would be a founder or CEO, potentially you're a recruiter or a member of the people ops team, maybe you're an external recruiter, maybe you're something else, which I would love for you just to pop in the chat as well. So we'll give everyone a moment to pull up that poll.
So I can publish the poll, Jen, if you stop sharing for a moment. So that way we can get more folks to see the results here. And you can respond to the poll on the right-hand side, once again, under the poll column. And so you'll be able to click in and put your answers there. This is actually super interesting. I'm glad we did this. We've got a nice even spread here. Very interesting. Again, you can input your response under the poll section on the right-hand side at the top. Very cool. I think these are our results.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a shift.
What? Oop. Sorry about that, Allison. I just clicked stop sharing. Apologies for that one.
No worries.
I don't know.
So I wasn't sure if you wanted to comment on this before we go back to your presentation.
Oh, I think, so it looks like, yeah, we're actually pretty even spread. I just want to look in the chat here. We have, it looks like Pooja, Senior Manager of Support. Hi, Pooja. Attorney, founder at a recruiting tech company. So we have a good amount of people from kind of all over. So I think a lot of this talk will be relevant to everyone here. And again, can't wait to get into it and get talking. So Allison, if you'll stop sharing, I'll reshare my screen again. So I always like to start off with a little bit of data, can't help it. So a huge deciding factor between a startup success and failure is hiring the right people into leadership positions. So when a founder or a CEO or and some other leader at the company decides there is a gap on the team that they need an executive to fill, hiring should be one of the highest priorities. I intended doing the research for this. I was like, oh, I wonder what's going on in the market right now. And so in a 2020 study, so this is about a year old, I guess, at this point, but still, I think, relevant. There was a study done by Owen Partners, which was named by Forbes as one of America's best executive recruiting firms. And they said that they saw a 71% increase in executive level searches, which I thought was pretty amazing. I hear a lot and I feel a lot of kind of the general competition with talent being super fierce, but seeing this really made me realize, wow, the talent for hiring, executive leaders is actually really, really tight as well. So now let's talk a little bit about how you ensure you're getting that best leader to propel your business forward, and also, how getting them on board. So there's lots of factors that I would say go into executive recruiting, and I just want to hit really 4 of the highlights here. So one is, how do you decide when is the right time to bring an executive on board? Then let's talk about executive sourcing. Are you going all in-house yourself, or are you going to actually use external help? Followed by an overview of how to address the executive skills, and just to see if they're the right fit for your company's needs, the company's culture. And then lastly, I just want to touch upon, how do you get to that yes? Once you've identified the executive, how do you get them to come on to the team? So let's dive on in. So when to hire. So before we, before I start talking about my opinions and thoughts on this, I'd love to do one last poll just to kind of understand, where is everybody right now in their executive hiring journey. So Allison's going to pop up a poll. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can do that. And so in this poll, it's going to have, I'm actively looking to hire an executive right now. I'm going to be looking in about a month, 3 months, 6 months, not sure yet. So I'd love to just see kind of where we're at right now as far as kind of, the executive journey. So cool. All right. 50% are looking right now. Very relevant to come to this talk then, I guess. Cool. So for anyone who is in that 50%, or going down a little bit, but for anyone who's there, would one of you volunteer to come up on stage and actually talk about kind of your stage of company and what made you decide to hire right now?
And how you can do that is under the Q&A portion. There's the video or vid Q&A. If you have a question that you are able to share with us.
Anybody in there want to share? Okay, it's all right. No worries. We got some shy people. It's the first morning of Boston Startup, so all good. I'll go back and share again and go from there. Let's see. So I always like to kind of start off with a baseline of kind of 5 stages of a startup. So the first one you have, of course, the seed stage. Second would be the early stage where you planted the seed, you want it to grow, you're starting to get some data points. The third is the growth stage, so some early wins, you've gotten some product market fit, maybe you're starting to scale. Fourth stage is expansion, where you have this idea and you want to expand into maybe additional markets or additional products. And this fifth stage is kind of, the holy grail, right? It is, you want to be acquired, you want to get IPO'd or some kind of other sale. So Allison, in your experience, have you seen any particular stage be more prevalent for executive hiring?
I think that certainly you need to have some foundational leaders when you are at both the seed and early stage. Although I will say, typically when you're seed funded, you'll usually just see co-founders. Early stage, you might try to find, at least in my experience, a go-to-market leader, as well as some kind of technical leader, if that wasn't already included in one of your co-founders' skill sets originally. And then perhaps also a finance leader as well, because if you are starting to find that product market fit, you're going to need to raise some capital in a lot of cases, right? Unless you're already profitable, in which case, hats off to you because you're doing something right.
Totally. Yeah. And sometimes it's actually really not apparent that you need the help until it's too late, especially if you're stuck in kind of that daily grind of building a company. Most CEOs and founders I've spoken with have basically said oh, I wish I would have hired that leader sooner. But I also, to your point, Allison, it's a balance when you're hiring a leader too soon as well. It's very possible to hire someone from that stage 1 transitioning to stage 2. But if you don't have that product market fit, it's going to be a little challenging from a CEO and founder to sell. And then obviously you're going to have some pretty high implications to your burn rate. So I always kind of think about do I have any solid paying customers that are going to fund this executive coming in before really, making that hire and deciding. In addition, though, to stage 2 to 3, money can still be tight, but at this point, you're actually starting to think about, what is the return on investment that I'm going to get from this leader? Am I going to get them to generate more money for my company by gaining new customers? Am I going to have them help me save money by maybe retaining more customers or maybe even developing employees? So all of this to be said, the why behind the need for the hire is really going to influence your timing on when. So as soon as you've really identified those kind of critical skills that you're going to need for your business, that's when you can start to kind of weigh the pros and cons of hiring or not hiring at that time. So let's move on to some sourcing. So getting ahead of any questions that you might have with other members of the leadership team, you can define position requirements. And I really highly advertise putting it on paper. This is also going to give you an entry point into your search. So you can define what type of customer you are going to go after first, help you to gain buy-in from any stakeholders, and also set expectations with prospective candidates. Once you've answered all of these things, I'd actually encourage you to pull in any stakeholders. So anyone who's going to be in the interview process, anybody that you need to get buy-in from, and have them answer a lot of these same questions, and then have an open meeting to get aligned on their expectations as well. One thing to watch out for, though, is if you ask somebody who their ideal candidate would be in mind for this role, it's going to be really great from a prospecting stage because they might have a real person in mind. However, it can be really limiting in the sense that this member might not be willing to compromise for anyone who's less than their ideal candidate that they had in mind. So this is the balance that you have to strike throughout the entire interview process, and bringing it back to a focus on position requirements and the skill set you need for the role is going to help you with that. So answering these questions as well is going to help you to think more broadly and conceptually. Maybe you need someone with experience that is taking a company public or fundraising. Maybe they need to have launched a consumer product, or even, beyond that, maybe they need to have launched a consumer product in the e-commerce space. So all of these things are going to help guide your search and take your candidate pool from infinite to manageable. So for example, if your position requirements are a finance leader who can help your company fundraise, you're probably going to focus your search on either CFOs or VPs of finance who have been at companies that raised money in the last 3 to 5 years. So in tandem with creating a list of position requirements, you can start to make a list of anyone who would help you with introductions to candidates that you're looking for. This could be members of your board, advisors, investors, executives at partner companies, maybe members of your current leadership team, and at the early stages of your company, it's going to be some of your current employees as well. Then after you have the list, and I'm going to call this list of people network builders, just for this talk, you can create 3 bullet points to illustrate what is going to be key for this role to helping your company achieve its goals. That is really just a distilled down version of the questions that you answered in defining the position requirements. But your goal for this is to paint a clear picture for all of these network builders and get them excited about this hire and what that hire can do. I will say at a growing startup, everyone is busy, and it's really kind of your job as the hiring manager, the founder, the CEO to explain the importance of prioritization for this hire. And if you do get any pushback from leaders, take the time just to sit down and talk about how this position is going to alleviate their pain points, maybe take things off of their plate or help them accomplish their goals. People are more willing, I would say, to help you out if they know how it's going to benefit them in the long run. So in your message to these network builders, you want to be clear on how you would like them to help you. People are busy and stressed and probably won't have full context. So it's really important for you to let them know that you're going to be doing the heavy lifting and be very clear on the part that they're going to play. When you're asking the network builders to help you, it's also important to let them know that you're going to get their approval before you reach out to any prospective candidates that you find in their network. You want to convey that you're going to be very respectful and keep things confidential. So I'm a big fan of GIFs, so I had to put a teamwork GIF in as well. Just saying, who do you know to anyone is probably not going to be the most effective. People might go to their LinkedIn profile, maybe see 1 or 2 names and get back to you, and it's just not going to be what you need. So really to effectively leverage your team's network, you can ask them if they'll make their network, LinkedIn network publicly visible just for a short period of time. So you can go in, see their connections, and then they can make it private again. I will say most people might not know how to make their LinkedIn publicly visible. So I'd suggest that when you're having a prep email out to them about the role and position requirements, you also include either a link to the LinkedIn help page or even creating a loom of how you went and made your connections publicly visible as well. This is just going to help you to get you deeper searches with Boolean searches, more keywords, and being able to look at secondary connections if their network is publicly visible. So then once you have access to your team's connections, you can actually start making your list of potential candidates. Remember, you can also see second degree candidates here as well. And then also another cool feature within LinkedIn is that you can search for people with similar backgrounds, but this is mostly on LinkedIn Recruiter, and the other searches are kind of limited. What I always suggest is going to, basically do your regular searches, and then once you hit your limit, get a free month of LinkedIn Recruiter Lite. It'll be good for you to think about kind of your ROI back and forth. And then once you do have a list of candidates that you think that are good for the role, then you can go back to that team member that was connected and ask them to facilitate an introduction. So I think warm introductions are one of the best ways to get in touch with people. And for people to actually answer your emails. So I also ask to craft a few templates for your network builders so that they can understand how to highlight the company, what the role is, and also how they can facilitate an introduction to you. It's good to present multiple options for them so that the network builder can pick which one is going to be the most comfortable for them. And then keeping track and following up. So for any of the roles I'm doing prospecting on, I actually like to have a Google Sheet so that I can track who is in process and who I need to follow up with. There are applicant tracking system features that do this, but for some reason, for prospecting in particular, Google Sheets is like my favorite. I usually include the prospect's name, LinkedIn profile, email address, if I have it, and then what status they're at. So if I've messaged them. So I included a quick sample here with some of my favorite people with kind of what my prospecting list actually looks like.
Yeah, can I get an intro to Sheryl Sandberg? That would be pretty sweet, Jen.
Yeah, I would love to actually have said this is real and connect and setting a phone call. Like that would be pretty amazing. But not there, sadly not there yet. Actually, the one on this list that I would like would be Ada Lovelace. I think that'd be pretty cool. But Michelle Obama like comes in pretty early on too. So yeah. Anyway, since I did mention Boolean searches, I did want to share out some standard Boolean searches that you can do to help find your executive leader. The cool thing about Boolean searches is you can customize them in so many different ways, and also Google provides so many different, Boolean search examples. But one really cool one is if you wanted to focus your search on a particular company. So going back to one of my first slides, if you were targeting the e-commerce space, you could actually add in an and company X to any of these strings to pull specific people from that specific target company. However, starting off with any Boolean searches, I usually keep it as broad as possible and then start to distill down from there. It really depends on how many people come back in the search for how many other kind of ands or ors I'll add in. So now, if you have the budget, I would actually suggest bringing on external help to help with an executive hire onto your team. I'd even go so far to say I have a preference actually for smaller firms to give you more dedicated assistance. So at Smile, we actually use a firm called Artemis, and they're more of a boutique firm. And we actually have two wonderful recruiters, Aaron and Lee, that we've worked with, and they've filled 3 of our leadership roles. Your external recruiting firm can be an extension of your team, but it's really important for you to bring them on as early as possible. So usually after you have designed the position requirements, you want to bring them on and give them as much context as they can have throughout the entire search. An external firm will also help you hire faster, but this partnership, you really need to have this be more of a partnership and give them every advantage possible. So you want to include YouTube videos, press kits, internal blogs, employee testimonials, really anything that's going to help them to learn more about your company faster. And then I like to have one-on-ones with the external recruiter regularly. So it gives me weekly updates with candidate tracking, just like that they were a full-time member of the team. I like to have that direct line of communication with them. And in the beginning, it's actually also good to bring them into early discussions with other stakeholders and just for them to understand kind of the other members of the team and their expectations as well. So that internal kind of dialogue back and forth. So an external interview process should be a little different than your typical interview process. In the case, in this case in particular, you're not just looking at a candidate's, if they can complete, task A, B, and C, you're really evaluating them on their leadership and team development skills and how they're going to add to your company's culture at an executive level. So whenever I'm thinking about an executive hire, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, how is this person going to shape our overall culture of the workplace and also the future of our business? So I want to vet both of those equally, or it could potentially crush our business. No pressure or anything like that. So then for the executive level interviews, most executives are going to be coming in to shape or fix a process. So you want to be able to have them be up-leveling the team, which creates a lot of disruption. So how do you actually evaluate them on if they're up for the challenge? So high level, here's just a few things that I look at. One, I want to understand if they have implemented change at a previous company. Every single startup is going through some form factor of change. So I want to know what they have learned from their experience previously, if they do it the same, if they may do it differently. Asking this question in particular helps me to get a glimpse into their communication style, how they celebrate wins, how they give and receive feedback, and also it'll give me a realistic preview into how they might propel the business forward. And then since most executives will be coming in to lead or build a team, you also need to get insight into their management style. So understanding their challenges that they've had in the past and how they've overcome them. How are they motivating employees? How are they, talking to underperforming employees of their or members of their team? And then also when I think about strong leaders, my mind goes to goal setting. So how likely is this leader to set a goal and achieve it? When I have a leader, I'm thinking about accountability being one of the best traits. Are they hitting timelines? Are they actually managing well in times of stress and chaos? Allison and I have swapped a lot of stories back and forth over the years, but I would also bet that some of us here have some amazing stories of greatness that have come through the chaos of things. But we can probably all agree that having a leader with critical decision-making and prioritization skills probably has helped us instead of us feeling like we're Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz and just being whipped up by a tornado. So now, as much as I love talking about what a leader should possess, I also think it's really important for you and your entire interview team to talk about red flags. I will say that I have been in interview processes where hiring managers have been so excited about all the shiny things that the leader is going to do that they forget or overlook some of the critical red flags that could be detrimental to the company. So the first I would say is arrogance. Executives are decision makers, but they shouldn't have a know-it-all attitude or make people ever feel inferior. Instead, they should admit their mistakes, be open-minded to other people's ideas, and have a high level of emotional intelligence. Having an arrogant leader will bleed into the rest of your company and create a toxic atmosphere quickly. Another thing to watch out for in the interview process is if the candidate tries to hide or spin the truth, I would consider not moving forward. You really want a leader who you're going to be able to trust and who is going to build trust with their team. One of my favorite leadership books is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And in that, he illustrates trust is the foundation of real teamwork. Without trust, it's really hard for you to achieve the results you want. And then poor presentation skills. So an executive is the external representation of your company and your brand. They're going to talk to customers. They're going to attend conferences. They're going to have speaking engagements. They're going to talk to candidates. They're going to manage teams. So if they come off disorganized or unprofessional, you really need to step back and think, is this, how I want my company to be perceived? And then in addition to that, if an executive is coming in underprepared for an interview, that is a huge red flag to me. You want the candidate to have taken some time to research the company, its products and services, and also have a small, at least an idea in mind about how they might contribute. Any leader who expects you to provide them with all that information is probably going to end up working that way. And you want a leader who's going to take just a proactive approach to their career, not somebody who you're going to have to spoon feed or is a yes person, is only going to tell you what you want to hear. So now you've interviewed and vetted candidates for this executive role. Now, how do you seal the deal? How do you get to that yes? So the first thing we have to talk about is total compensation. Throughout the entire interview process, you've most likely started to cover what the candidate is looking for in terms of a base, a bonus, equity, and any other deal breakers. You should know on the back end that executives are doing their own research to understand what is competitive in the marketplace. So you need to be doing the same. This is actually where an external firm will come in super handy because they are talking with executives all the time. So they have an up-to-date pulse on the market. which will help them, or will help you to guide, be guided through those conversations by leveraging that external firm. However, if you don't have an external firm to help you, I would say that you should look at things like PayScale, Salary.com, or get an option impact account as well. In addition to the standard benefits, executives might want to negotiate things like fully covered benefits packages, healthcare stipends, 401k matching, loans to purchase restricted stock, potentially club memberships, financial planning, or even termination provisions, to just name a few. So it's good to talk with your board, your head of finance, if you have one, your head of people, again, if you have one, just to know what you can realistically offer. It is most helpful to also get a feel for the candidate's compensation and deal breakers throughout the entire interview process, so that when you get to that offer stage, you're completely aligned. You want to make sure that you're coming into these negotiations with this executive really as prepared as possible. So you want to understand all of their needs, their timeline to make a decision, and address any concerns before you even say, hey, we want to make you an offer to join the company. You want to make them so excited about this opportunity that they're going to be telling you by the end of the interview process that they want this job. And so last slide is the 48-hour rule. So for me, a good rule of thumb to define success is if you've gotten a verbal acceptance 48 hours before the offer has been made, after the offer has been made. The caveat to this is if you're still in the negotiation stage, I typically add on an additional 48 hours after that negotiation. During this time, members of the interview team could reach out to the candidate and just tell them how excited they would be to have them potentially join. One fun memory, I know we sent a potential leader a customized swag box to convey our excitement before they joined the team. And they actually verbally accepted via Zoom wearing the swag. So it was a really, really cool moment. And then, after the candidate has accepted, yay, you want to set up touch points to keep that excitement going. So in closing, closing an executive takes a good bit of intention at every step of the process. So you want to create this genuine connection with them and give them a realistic preview into what it would be like to work at your company. Just hoping for a yes is not going to cut it. You have to proactively work towards it at every stage. And you want to make sure that you actually begin this executive search with those goals in mind. So let's just see if there's any more in the chat. Allison, anything we should chat over currently, or is there any Q&A you want to put in?
There is.
Cool.
So I am, there we go. Perfect. All right. So we'll kick off here with Natalia Montero's question. If it'll let me publish. I clicked the publish button and it's not working. So, why is it not letting me do that?
So I see Natalia's question, how would a successful introduction look like?
Correct.
Yeah. Yep. So actually, funny enough, I have an appendix of a template of what it might look like. Austin, can I share my screen again?
It's not saying that I'm publishing, and therefore I cannot unpublish.
All right. Let me see. Natalia, can you see this screen?
Oh, I can see it. Perfect.
Cool. So this would be a sample prospecting template. So it's like, hey, and then you would give this to one of your network builders as a template. Like, hey, just wanted to I know we haven't been in touch for a while, but we're adding a VP of blank to our organization. Just would love to let you know, or ask if somebody would be interested. I want to see CX, which would be whoever is running the search. So it could be your CEO, founder, head of people, just to connect with you with more information. It could be as easy as this. I always I left this pretty general. I typically add in a little bit more about the company, some links to the company as well. So like a new blog post or something. And then I'll also add in, after this organization here, I'll add in like this role is going to help us achieve X, Y, and Z, just to have it be a little bit more engaging and give people, again, a realistic preview of what it would be like to actually be successful at this company. So cool. I'll stop sharing my screen again.
Perfect. And then next, we'll take a look at Christopher Mannion's question. It's still not letting me publish, so sorry about that, everybody. But Christopher says, it looks like a lot of the tracking is in Sheets. At what point does it make sense to look at an applicant tracking system or customer relationship management to track and engage candidates?
Yeah. So the Google Sheets that I use is actually in conjunction with an applicant tracking system. A lot of applicant tracking systems are getting into the sourcing side now. And Allison, I don't know if you've ever used one as well. I am not, I haven't gotten comfortable with the sourcing side of it yet. And so for me, Google Sheets has just been easier after you have gotten a candidate in process. So like after you've reached out to them on LinkedIn or made that email introduction and they've said yes, that's usually when I parse their information into our applicant tracking system.
Yeah, I can share my experiences too here. So I found that typically, if I am sourcing, I do like to keep everything in our applicant tracking system. And so over at Connector On, we use Lever. I use Lever at my last startup as well. However, if I am doing some freelance recruiting, whether it be executive search or otherwise, typically I'll lean into Google Sheets just because I don't think that any applicant tracking system has really nailed kind of like the external agency vendor connection and entryway into someone's internal ATS yet. Like you can tag each other, but it's still not super crisp. And so I think that Google Sheets is maybe less of like a when and more of like a use case of like, are you an external recruiter? Are you an internal recruiter? And if you are an internal recruiter or a founder, that's going to be hiring more than, I don't know, at least like upwards of 5 requisitions that year, you can definitely find a pretty cheap ATS to work with that will make your life a heck of a lot easier, especially if you aren't, if you haven't made that first people ops hire yet. So like Jazz HR, for example, is a really cost-effective tool for earlier stage startups to use as an applicant tracking system, and definitely recommend if you're going to be conducting even upwards of like 3 searches. It just makes it, have huge ROI for your time.
Cool.
Looks like Tim also has a question here, and he questions, do you recommend or use any assessment tools like predictive index? I assume that's what PI is, since we're in #Boston Startup Week.
So my very first startup, Fixu, we actually were using PI to hire all of our sales individuals. We had a hiring manager, our sales director at the time really loved it. And I have a love-hate relationship with it. Like for one reason, I really like it because I think they're very accurate and you can actually tell like what traits you have. But for our sales team, what happened was he had every candidate go through it. And if they didn't have a certain graph, they're like, no, they wouldn't be good for it. And I actually had to go back in and illustrate. I had everybody on his sales team take the PI as well. And I had to show him that some of his top performers did not have the same graph he had. So like, I think it is a good thing about, knowing the candidate, but if you're using it as like an all or nothing, I would have to say like, don't get into that kind of realm.
I would echo a similar sentiment. I think that there's a certain amount of risk that comes with using those personality assessments as a recruiting tool, as opposed to an employee engagement tool. So when you're looking at bringing somebody into your organization, and if they don't have a certain type of personality, are you then cutting somebody because they're not a culture fit? Like, that's definitely not something you want to do, especially if you are trying to target underrepresented groups that maybe haven't broken into tech yet and might not have, those inherent personality traits coming in of your existing team. And then you have a homogenous team, and then you're not going to win. So like, not that this is a panel about DEI, but I'll get off my soapbox here for a minute. But I do think that using personality assessments, and sorry to like Debo Q&A here. I do think that as a means of finding how your coworkers or direct reports work best and engage and communicate, they can be a really powerful tool for that.
Yeah, +1. Cool. Let's see who else we got here. A few more questions coming in. Do you want, Allison, do you want me to pick another one in here?
I think we've got one from Ryan that she might be typing into the Q&A section right now. But she said, accountability is huge. What kind of questions do you like to ask to assess accountability?
Yeah. I actually think about, this is one of those things where it's like going back to the goal setting of like, hey, what goals did you have as a team? And how did you achieve them? And if somebody comes back and they're like, well, we didn't really have goals. Like, oh, okay. Like step back very slowly. And then the other thing I think about from a goal setting side is like, oh, how did you get there? If they don't have a good journey or a good story about that. Or a huge red flag is if, oh, like we didn't get here because of da 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 da, and like they throw somebody else under the bus. They're not taking accountability for their part that they played. The accountability side actually kind of bleeds into the like anti-arrogant side as well. Like they're actually open to and honest about their mistakes that they've had. I think that also is really, really helpful as a leader to show that vulnerability and show kind of that growth as, you know, keeping yourself accountable, but also knowing that you could fall short.
+1 to all of that. I am like the biggest fan of behavioral interviewing. And so anytime I'm training a new interviewer at Connect RN, the favorite competency that I have folks look for is what I call managing performance. And it's the ability to both take and implement feedback. And I think that is just so critical at all levels, even the executive level, because you have to have some sort of knowledge or awareness rather that you're not God, you're not the end all be all, right? Even as a CEO coming in, right? And so being able to be open to that feedback, whether that be peer-to-peer feedback, or even if that person is managing up and providing that feedback, it's just so essential to show kind of the inner workings of how that relationship will look like. And pretty much every time there's been a flag in that competency, later on down the road, there has been some kind of issue that pops up saying like, oh, well, maybe I should have read into that when I was doing my risk assessment and my recruitment process a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah. Yeah. Jacqueline also has one in here. I'm going to publish it if I can. So she said, I've noticed that interviewers can be hesitant at an exec level about detailed hands-on work. What are your thoughts about getting specific work samples from execs during interviews? I really love getting specific examples of it, especially if you're at an earlier stage, so like that stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3, you're still playing a player coach role. You know, you're doing, I mean, I'll take my role, for instance, like I'm still creating all of the offer letters and signing them, but I'm also having these coaching sessions with members of our staff to be like, hey, what is our overall strategy of our business? So like, you're really kind of doing both. So I think asking execs for the specifics of what they've done is good. I also think I would go a step further and just say like, what do you like to do as well? Because that will also help you manage if the exec is actually the right fit for your stage right now. If you have someone who is not willing to get their hands dirty or wants to just kind of hire and hire and hire, you're probably going to have a problem because you might not be able to do that at your startup, at the stage of startup that you're at right now. Allison, do you want to add anything to that one?
I was just messaging you. I think I might have a glitch in the platform here. I don't see that question under the Q&A or any other questions. So I'm just like,
sorry.
I was trying to troubleshoot there on the back end. I didn't even hear the question. I'm sorry.
All good. Natalia also said a book that was mentioned. Oh, yes. I'll just plop it open right here. It is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I have it like religiously near me at the moment. I just keep reading it over and over again. It's been really helpful from a leadership perspective, just to get kind of our teams going in the right direction. And then there's actually a few coaches out there that will do offsites with you based on this book. And you can start to address the areas, like the gap areas for your team. So if you have an absence of trust, if you actually have an absence of accountability, if you don't have results, it's really cool to be able to see kind of, cool is the right word for it, but it is insightful to see the gaps you have on your team right now. So I recommend.
I've also read it, but audio version, so I don't have a physical book to show. It was recommended to me by Cengage's former director of talent. He's now over at Chewy, Adam. I don't know why his last name escapes me, but he was getting his MBA at Cornell, and that was part of their curriculum, was going through that book. So.
Wow. Yeah, I have a lot of it bookmarked. I'm a very tactile person, so like I have to like have a physical copy of it. It's kind of sad, but I'm like, it's great. Cool. Let's see. What else we got here? Let's see. Diva. Let's see. When recruiting an exec, would you suggest adding a personality test to the interview process? This kind of goes back to the predictive index one, actually. Yes and no. I think it would be interesting, but I also wouldn't, ride or die on that one. So, cool. Let's see. Let's see what is next. Accountability is huge. Oh, wait, you just did that one with accountability, right? I think I saw that one come in, Allison. And it looks like Abby Wolf has one in here. So she's running a search at the moment, which has tangible referrals from leadership, which is awesome. And you're also actively sourcing, which is really great. You have 3 of those who she's actively working, and it seems very viable candidates. She mentioned, I mentioned engaging an external firm early on, and have a small shop. She has a small shop that she's already, I can't read today, apparently, Allison. I am so sorry. Like, this is just, I am butchering yours, Abby. Sorry. So let me get to her
At
question.
least you can see it. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so it sounds like you are, Abby, you are equally as hesitant to get behind in this search by not engaging a firm yet. So I think this goes back to a balance of your time, if anything. You might have a great network of executives in your pool, just from the people that or the people at your company or your board that they know, which is really great. I will say that when you're thinking about hiring an executive, this is not one of those hires that you hire very, very frequently. So the cost of acquisition for this hire should be higher, because the cost of the output of them will be higher, and the value and impact of them will be super high. So I actually think engaging a firm early on is probably the way to go. Literally, unless you have no budget whatsoever. We at Privy in particular, we actually hired a lot of our execs from the candidate pool we have, which worked out well. But I also, I think I am always kind of like, well, what if we actually had, access to all these other people over here? Would we have hired, did we hire the best person? So I think that hopefully answered that question, but maybe in a weird roundabout way.
I think something I wanted to kind of touch upon earlier too, a little bit of a cautionary tale, unfortunately, about the demise of the last startup that I worked for, Cozykin. So we went bankrupt. And so as you can probably create a dotted line from that, was they needed a CFO. In fact, we did. So the cost of not making that hire, even if you're going up against oh, well, do we really need that person? It's going to be a huge, cut into our funds. It could be what ultimately makes or breaks you. And I think that part of that cautionary tale was that our co-founders hadn't quite nailed down the pricing structure to create economics that were sustainable for the business, that perhaps if we had a CFO, particularly going into the last 6 months of our business, we could have adjusted to save us, and also to keep a better pulse on our cash flow situation too, which ultimately was getting drained significantly. I'm not going to hate on marketing, but it was a lot of going into marketing, right? to where if we had somebody in place as a true finance leader, then that could have been caught and, ultimately saved part of the business. So just one use case as to why hiring sooner rather than later is super duper critical.
Yeah, totally. Tim wrote in, he would recommend The Advantage as well. I have not read it, but I have heard really good things, Tim. So thank you for sharing that. And it looks like Jacqueline has another one in here. When you get a finalist for a candidate, do you make the offer or is it better to come from the CEO? So if it's anyone on our executive team, I want the CEO to do it because or the COO to do it, depending on who they're going to be reporting into. There's always at least one additional meeting or a sell meeting at the very end. And so I try and prep the CEO or the founder on that conversation and just get how they can give that offer to the candidate as well. But anyone at that executive level, usually I'm asking the CEO to do, or they're proactively wanting to do it as well. So cool. Looks like two more in here. Oh no, it's going to be I'm going to read. How do you figure out a level of a commitment and real interest of a candidate in the company? Are there a set of questions that I'd suggest asking them? Oh, got it. Okay. So Diva, you're asking level of commitment and real interest from the candidate in the company. So not from employees of the company, but candidates that are interested in your company. That's how I'm reading this. So I'm going to take it. I actually use Workable a good bit for their questions. I don't have an appendix on specific questions that I would ask in the slides today, but I would go into Workable. Most of it actually is more about kind of their experience and the challenges they've faced. So a lot of the times I'll actually just start off with tell me a little bit about what you learned from your last startup, and then that will draw our conversation further into other specific kind of competencies that I want to probe on from there. Allison, what about you? You got any fun interview questions?
I mean, kind of going back to what you were saying before about flags in the process, it's not necessarily an interview question, but if somebody is underprepared or unprepared for the interview, that's how you can kind of gauge some level of interest too, because if they're like, oh, hey, I just saw that you were awarded Inc. 5000's top fastest growing companies. That's so cool. That's somebody who's done their homework. They're obviously interested because they've put forth that extra effort. Where there are cases where if your product is super duper technical, where you just aren't quite sure what the company does. You can sometimes see the candidate approach it as hey, here's my understanding of what your business does. Can you help me? And then they share that. And then can you help me fill in the gaps? I think that's also okay too. Mm-hmm. But when someone just has absolutely no idea what your company is doing, maybe they're trying to juggle too many interviews, but it just kind of helps you to show, and thankfully that doesn't happen too often at the executive level. But stranger things have happened. So I think that's one way, but motives are really, really huge. Any recruiting process that I've taken part in, mostly because I work for extremely mission-driven companies. And so if they don't have a really strong why, mm-hmm. then I'm going to immediately be disengaged in their interview process. They have to be passionate about what the company is doing if they're going to instill that passion in their directs. And that just has so many ripple effects across the organization, that kind of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, baseline, they got to know what you do. And then one step up from there, they have to have a good or relatable why about what you do. And then instill that passion of said why, or help others find their why to instill passion and continue to do good work for everybody else. So that's kind of not necessarily a set of questions, but how I might evaluate it. And so could be something as simple as, what makes you interested in working at X company name, right? Or why would you prefer to take this role at X company name as opposed to competitor? And then you'll get some real juicy responses, and also see how well they've prepared, because maybe they didn't know that so-and-so was a competitor.
Ooh, that's a good one, Elsa. I like that one. Oh, nice. Brian wrote in, What do you think about starting part-time, a fractional CXO, CFO, or HR? I think it's possible to do that. And a lot of places you might actually have either a member of your board or maybe an advisor might start off as a part-time at your company at like that executive level. It's always a challenging balance though, because especially going back to like the different stages at your company, maybe they still have a full-time job, but they're going to work part-time at your seed stage company as well. So it really depends on if what you need is going to be, full-time, or maybe, hey, like it's going to be 8 hours a week, or if they're actually able to balance, hey, I need to get enough money to support my family, or do X, Y, and Z, and if that's gonna work too. So it's definitely possible. I have seen it work, but also I think it really takes good open communication between that leader and the startup as well. So, yeah.
+1 to all of that. I've seen really great fractional CFOs and really not engaged fractional CFOs. And so making sure that they haven't overextended themselves, especially if they do have a full-time job on top of your kind of like consulting. Obviously you can't make that decision for them, but just be aware that your startup might not be their top priority, or if their client list is too large. So paying attention to that can be important.
Yeah. There's actually a few like CFO outsourcing companies, especially early on, that you could get into. I was actually talking to a person in my LinkedIn network a while ago, and just like for more of a curiosity kind of thing. But I think it's called Finero or Finiero as well. So I'll do some research and put it as a follow-up too. Cool. Looks like I'm really appreciating everybody's like comments that are coming in. Jacqueline also asked, is it common to get backdoor references on execs, and what guidance would you have on navigating them? Yes. I think it's always good to get some information on how they've worked in the past. This is a very windy road, to say the least, on this. Of like, you might have a person that they have worked with previously, and they may just give you all of the happy thoughts from it, or they might be open and honest of, hey, like there are some gaps here that they need to work on. It really depends on your level of relationship with that backdoor reference and their relationship with the backdoor reference as well. Allison, any like red flags there, like things that you wouldn't do?
Things I wouldn't do. I don't know. Backdoor references can be sticky. So I think you kind of got to go from, and I'll put on my more HR compliance hat here for a second, since we all have a really great hat collection, since we wear so many in the startup world. I think that anytime you implement a process, you should be doing it consistently across the board. And so if you're doing backdoor references on one candidate, you need to make sure that you're following through across the board. Mm-hmm. So that way you're effectively evaluating everybody in your candidate pool for that particular position. And to throw on an additional layer, it's like, if you are a company that is conducting backdoor references, then you need to make sure you're not just doing it for this executive level role, but other searches too. So that way, ultimately, you're creating a fair and equitable process as much as possible. Personally, I don't conduct references currently at ConnectRN. I think that while they can be a tool in this talent market, people and candidates are just going so quick that I don't want to slow it down. And I really, really respect our interviewing teams to trust their judgment that if this is our person, then let's just do it. Let's go,
Yeah, totally. And Allison, I think this might actually be more for you, but I could also potentially talk about it. But how is the process different for mission-driven companies? And then but renewables?
renewables, like renewable energy. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't been in the energy space. So I've done ed tech, child care tech. It's a thing. It's niche, but it's there. And health tech. And did my time in agency as well. And so, ultimately, I think having had that agency experience versus being with more mission driven companies, ultimately, I just find that the difference isn't so much in the sourcing and recruiting, although that's definitely going to be to your advantage. Like, I don't think I've ever come across anybody that said, "Oh, I really don't care about education or healthcare." Like, who are you? Like, we're in a global pandemic, right? So I think it certainly can help on the sourcing side, but ultimately, wow, we are almost out of time. Thanks so much. I think we're going to get cut off here. But it makes closing the candidate easier. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Have a great time and click the agenda button to see anything else in the conference. All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.